Welcome to a very special live episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, August 8th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 23 days, the game against Michigan in 114 days. As always, there's a lot to talk about this time of year. Even more, we'll get to the Jim Harbaugh news at some point, the news that broke while we were at Ohio State for interviews. I'm going to start with some of the stuff we learned on Wednesday, talking to Ohio State linebackers coach James Laurinaitis and a number of the linebackers, as well as Ohio State running backs coach Carlos Lachlan and some of the running backs. You know, I think maybe the thing that's most interesting to me, Tony Gerdeman, is C.J. Hicks. C.J. Hicks has been such a topic of conversation around the program since he was a recruit, five-star recruit. You know, Mark Giffler dubbed him Captain Buckeye. He was really a leader of that class. And he's been, a constant topic of conversation. And, this year it feels like, okay, now he's in line to get on the field. But it feels like every time we talk to someone about C.J. Hicks, about what C.J. Hicks does well, it's always the same answer. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, well, why don't you just do that?
Make the entire airplane out of it. And that's something that Jim Knowles has talked about, how they're trying to find more ways to attack. And C.J. Hicks did say this group of linebackers is going to have a lot more tackles for loss and sacks than last year's and previous years. No disrespect to any of those guys. It's just the way they're going to be attacking in year three. It's some very athletic linebackers. One of the most insightful things was C.J. Hicks talking about what has kind of held him back the first 2 years. And he said he was just trying to be perfect. And I think he said, this year, I don't care.
Yeah.
Let's just go. And that was something that James Laurinaitis said. It's like, we're trying to getting CJ to the point where don't worry about the mistakes necessarily. Just see it and trigger and go. And that's something that it's funny that you have to be so perfect, and you can't. Sonny Styles is talking about if you one misstep and you're done, and C.J. Hicks is talking about I'm trying to be imperfect. You just got to attack, and it's part of the aggressive nature that they want to play, but also the natural way that they want to play, where it starts to come naturally, and you're not doing as much thinking, and you're just playing, and sounds like they're getting there.
Yeah, it does feel like there's some significant progress, and they're talking about these guys in the way you would sort of expect them to be talking about them at this time of year, where there's been a lot of growth. You're in your third year in the program for both of those guys now, both guys who came in with a ton of recruiting hype, and it has been an easier or faster path to the field to regular playing time for Sonny Styles. But both of those guys really now in year three, it's wide open. It is in front of them for them to take. And I'm going to be interested to see how much they really do get C.J. Hicks out there and have C.J. Hicks really do the stuff they're talking about. Because, you don't want to overthink. That's obviously something that, we have seen overly complicated Ohio State defenses in the past, where guys are just constantly calculating the hypotenuse of the triangle in their brains, and then the people are running past them. We've seen that at various times over the years. You also don't want to be just going full Leroy Jenkins at all times. I mean, there's a balance there, and obviously there's a little more nuance to this than we're really laying out there. But
you think it's more nuanced than World of Warcraft or whatever?
Was that what that was from? I don't know. Yeah, it was whatever it was from, whatever Leroy was doing. There's a little more nuance to it than that. But C.J. Hicks to me is one of the more interesting players, because it feels like there's an incredible spectrum of what he could be this year. You asked him, what was it?
Like 30 or 40 or 50 snaps.
Yeah.
In a game.
What does a full day of work for C.J. Hicks look like this fall?
Lots of tackles for loss and sacks, and that's his thing. And he said he's got a knack for getting to the quarterback. He has some of it is just that's where when you're on the attack, you just react to what's in front of you. When you're being attacked, you have to kind of, where am I supposed to be? What kind of step am I supposed to take? There's more thinking to it, but when you're attacking, you're forcing others to react. And I think he's very good at that. And he seemed very talking to him
very
today.
much, very, very much. Yeah. He's always been, very comfortable, very mature guy. And, so I think he's someone who I think a lot of Ohio State fans would really dearly love to see have a good year this year. I feel like we're talking about the linebackers in an appropriate order, because James Laurinaitis was asked, who's the most complete linebacker? He said, Cody Simon.
Yeah, right.
But Cody Simon has never been the guy to get the headlines. He did not. He was not like a complete unknown in recruiting by any means, but he also was not the 5-star profile that everyone went, ooh, look, shiny. in recruiting, and he's been on the field at Ohio State. He's got more starting experience at linebacker than anyone else at Ohio State, the rest of the team combined, really. He's very consistent, very reliable. It's a player that, the coaching staff can't say enough good things about. And then here we are, a couple of schnooks, talking about all the other guys in the room, the other potential starters this year, and once again leaving Cody Simon for a third of the potential starters.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because even though he's a new starter from last year, I mean, he still started a handful of games last year even, but he's a known commodity. And these others, we'll get to Sonny Styles probably at some point, they are shinier, that's for sure, but they're more unknown, and so we talk about them a little bit more. But Cody, we've said it all along, like they're very confident in him. Not necessarily any reason to have concern. And when we're talking in the preseason or in the off season, a lot of times we're talking about the concerns. Where are the question marks? I don't think they have any question marks about him. I think part of that was because he played very well last year. But I am also interested to see how he does in being a leader, probably a captain of this team, perhaps captain of this team, and being the middle linebacker. And as James Laurinaitis talked about when he was asked about Gabe Powers, like the Mike, whoever it is, has to be the general of defense. They have to get everybody right. They have to make sure they have to get the defensive line right. You've got to make sure everybody is straight. And he's got such a 3-year understanding of this particular defense that they feel so comfortable. And it's, how they're allowed more coaches on the field now. He is an extra coach on the field as well, like literally on the field.
Literally on the field, yes. And, he will have the green dot this year, so he's going to have that additional responsibility. It just feels like every time we talk about CJ Hicks, it's athleticism, and Sonny Styles, it's freakish athleticism. And with Cody Simon, it's
gumption,
so reliable, so consistent.
Yeah.
It's like all the words that are not the exciting words that you put in the the headline of a YouTube show, but it's all the words that the coaching staff are going to, like, this is like the highest praise a coach can give you is reliable, consistent. Like, this is the stuff. This is, when we're talking about the running backs, you're talking about the freshman running backs, and it's like, oh, what are they doing? Oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. They got to work on their pass blocking. You got to, and it's like, this is the stuff that the coaches care about: consistency, reliability, be able to be a leader on the field. That's the stuff the coaches care about.
When you retitle this show, just Cody Simon talks about his massive consistency.
Do I have to put massive in all caps?
Yes, yes, you do.
Okay. We did touch briefly on Sonny Styles earlier, but you mentioned him, so let's circle back to Sonny Styles. He is someone who has been on the field a little bit more. We saw him even as an early enrollee true freshman playing meaningful minutes in a season-defining college football playoff semifinal game. So he's like way ahead of the curve in terms of getting on the field. Played safety last year. Had a very solid season. Athletic enough to do it. But it has always sort of felt like his ultimate destiny was a little closer to the line of scrimmage. Now he is going to be a little closer to the line of scrimmage at that will linebacker position. He and CJ Hicks sort of going to be sharing that, I think, to a certain degree. He's someone who I'm really intrigued to see what this looks like, because it feels like, we've seen a bunch of him, but now it feels like, boy, this is where he's probably the most natural fit on this team. And with the athleticism, with the awareness, all the other stuff he brings, that's really an intriguing thing.
Yeah, and James Laurinaitis mentioned that in the spring he had to learn to slow down, and because one misstep is going to ruin you. So he comes from safety where you've got to, he's moving faster. You've got to be more deliberate as a linebacker. But then in talking to Sonny, he's like, yes, you have to be more deliberate, but you have to get to the point where you are natural. And he's like, I'm still in practice. You're trying to be deliberate so that you can be deliberate in your film work, but you want to get to the point where you're not necessarily thinking anymore. You're just, it's all comfortable. And, he's obviously very comfortable doing this and getting more comfortable. And he was asked about the coverage aspects. Like, how do you feel about covering tight ends and running backs? He's like, well, it fits me more because I did not like having to cover the 4-3 receivers in the slot. So he's happy with that. He did say, no disrespect to the tight ends, because there's a lot of good tight ends out there.
Not a lot of 4-3 tight ends out there.
But feels much more comfortable doing that at linebacker than in the slot. But then can also be a Sam who can defend somebody out there. If the need arises, they can be multiple with 3 linebackers if they want. And also, one of the interesting things that Sonny said is that he mentioned how the will and the nickel can kind of be similar at times. And so he's learning about his position by also watching other people make mistakes and like filing that away. It's like, don't do that. And so that was interesting too.
Don't do what Donnie don't does.
That's right.
The some of the younger linebackers, I'm just kind of zipping through in my head what we heard about guys like Gabe Powers and
Arvell Reese
and
Peyton Pierce
and Garrett Stover. Why don't you hit? I want to get to Garrett Stover later because I thought James Leonidas had an interesting answer on him. But what stood out to you among some of the other young linebackers?
He was asked about Peyton Pierce. James Leonidas was, and he just said like he is not behind. He was out this spring with an injury, so he's right up to speed. He's not behind. He's playing Will right now, but they'll get him to the point where he can play everything. But he's just downhill. He's tough. He's very much in the mode that James Laurinaitis you would think would like, and that's what he is. He's a gritty, like I said, downhill physical player who has fit in pretty well so far and has a pretty bright future. I don't know what that means for this year, but if you want to talk about Garrett Stover this year.
Yeah, Garrett Stover this year, probably not going to be a, fighting for the starting linebacker job kind of position, but James Laurinaitis said if Garrett Stover's not out on kickoff, something has gone terribly wrong. Garrett Stover kind of fits the profile of the guy who's going to go out there and just be an absolute assassin on special teams. And, he's one of those guys who I think we had looked at and thought, yeah, he's probably going to not redshirt this year because he's going to be an absolute assassin on special teams. And that is definitely what it sounds like James Laurinaitis is expecting there. He said, he's a Stover, which, that's like shorthand at Ohio State for like, well, he's going to go a million miles an hour. Right. He's going to, he is going to be about an 8 out of 10 on the pain don't hurt scale. It just that last name carries a certain expectation around here, and that's it sounds like Garrett Stover is going to be living up to the family reputation.
He ain't got time to bleed.
No,
that sort of thing,
and not a brother of Cade Stover, a cousin of Cade Stover. One other thing that I thought as you were talking, I feel like we should just sort of define our terms every once in a while. When we're talking about linebackers, you'll hear us talk about Will and Mike and Sam. And Will is the weak side linebacker, get it because it starts with W. Mike is the middle linebacker because it starts with an M. Sam is the strong side linebacker, which starts with an S. There you go. And Ohio State probably mostly going to be playing in that 4-2-5 defense. The 2 in the middle is the number of linebackers, so that's mostly going to be your Will and your Mike, so your weak side and middle. Weak side is probably going to be Sonny Styles, C.J. Hicks. Mike is probably going to be Cody Simon.
Big probably.
That's less of a probably. There's really not much of a probably on any of those, but yeah.
I did like what CJ said about the Will position. He said that him and Sonny are the same player, basically, and that they talk about it to themselves, to each other, like, we don't care who starts as long as both of us eat. And that's kind of how we feel. Like, as long as the meal, if we're all getting fed, that sort of thing.
It's more literal in our case, but in their case, it's more.
But they don't care. They just both want to play. And for CJ Hicks, of course, like, this is his 3rd year. Nobody wants to be playing more than he does after waiting patiently and trying to be perfect. And now no longer, I'm with you. I don't care about being perfect.
Yeah. With 600 something episodes of this show, 1,000 something episodes of Buckeye Weekly, it's probably too soon to say whether we care about perfection. I don't know. Someone else, another position where there's going to be some reps spread around and everyone's kind of okay with it is running back. Carlos Laughlin got a chance to talk. Carlos Laughlin is such a fascinating guy to listen talk about players, and he will let you know. He at one point basically said he is confident in the players because he knows that he can coach them to do what they need to do, but also if they're not doing it, then it's on him. It is his fault if they're not doing what they need to do. But, with a Travion Henderson, with a Quinshon Judkins, either of those guys would be running back 1 on whatever team you want to mention in the Big Ten, even the ones with the EA Sports cover boys. Like, those guys are probably starting at any of the other 17 Big Ten schools this year. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to juggle. They probably want their numbers. Yep. They want the reps. They also don't want to have too much, wear and tear on their bodies as they head into what could be their final college season. So balancing that and balancing keeping everyone happy, keeping the ball spread out, keeping everyone healthy. I mean, that's going to be an interesting juggling act in there this year.
Well, and I asked Coach Lachlan about that. How do you preach the unselfishness, but also preach the desire to, I want the football?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the quote was, I'll just say they don't have any choice. Like, he's in charge, so they have to deal with it. But the ownership that he takes over that room, he said any mistake is on him. And he gets, he said he takes it personally when a coach will critique one of his running backs, because it's like, then he has made a mistake. And he's like, coaches don't need to yell at the players; they can yell at me. That sort of thing. So I thought that was interesting. He was asked, "Hey, are you comfortable with James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon, the two freshman running backs?" He's like, "Well, I'm never comfortable. So, but I am confident that they can play because I'm confident in my ability to coach." And so, those two guys, we got to talk to them as well, and we'll get to them. But he seems pretty happy with everything, and really, why wouldn't you? He was asked about, "Hey, could we maybe see, Caleb Downs was mentioned." He's like, "Yeah, I'm not going there. That's not anything that I have anything to do about. I have no say in that one." Nice try, though.
That feels like a decision that's going to get made at a higher pay grade than his, and his pay grade is pretty high on the org chart here. So, yeah, we'll see. Well, that might be a Jim Knowles decision more than a Carlos Lachlan decision in some ways. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting room, because it's such a short list. There are only 4 scholarship guys, but also, boy, the top 2 is so elite, and the 2 freshmen are so intriguing that there's just, and you've got a couple of walk-ons behind them. I mean, there's a lot of interesting talent in that room, and some sort of diverse talent where some guys are going to fit better in some situations than others. Some of the younger guys, James, we talked new and shiny in the first half. Let's talk a little about the new and shiny guys, James Peoples, Sam Williams-Dixon. Those guys are both, I think, at least as far ahead as I expected them to be at this point. And in Sam Williams-Dixon's case, I feel like maybe ahead of where I expected him to be right now. He's looked very impressive, but it seems like this is, like when we talk about the tight ends, and it's like, oh, wow, that guy could be an incredible pass catcher. Sure. And then you talk to the coach, it's like, well, how's he blocking? Yeah. And it's like, it feels like that's kind of the conversation around all these guys. It's not, with the ball in his hands, sure. With him out running a pass route, sure. And this is true of everyone in that room, not just one guy. Great, fantastic. How's he going to do with picking up a blitz?
Well, and that has been one of the points of emphasis, the pass blocking. Like, everybody is very willing. Sam Williams-Dixon did say it helps to know who you're supposed to block. That was,
it does feel like that would be an important part of the process. Yes.
So learning that, and that kind of goes into something else I asked him about, where we've kind of seen him grow and get better in camp. We saw all 4 practices last week, and he started to make a name for himself, or he already has a name. He's got 3 of them, but he started to show up more and more. And I asked him about that. It goes back to, like, you get to watch film and you get a better understanding of what you're doing. And boy, it sure is amazing when you know what you're doing, how easy it is to do it and look better doing it. But so he's getting more and more comfortable, and it shows when we get to watch him running between tackles and, making defenders miss. And he just seems very natural out there. And another guy that said the spring game was a real boost of confidence for him, because he played pretty well in that one, had a nice long run in there, had a couple of long runs in there. But he is not, neither of these guys, I don't know how much time you got to spend with either of them, are talking like true freshmen. And by this point, you almost are no longer true freshmen, since they've been here since January.
Right. You've been here since January, but also you don't have the luxury of being a true freshman. You are part of the spare in the pair and a spare now. So you do not have the luxury of, like, I'm going to take a gap year and then we'll see how backpack around Europe this fall. Like, no, you got to backpack around the rest of the Big Ten this fall.
Backpack behind the quarterback.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting thing, because we have seen the running from both of those guys. James Peoples, Carlos Lachlan talked about pad level. Pad level with James Peoples seems like that's not an issue. He just runs so low to the ground, and real shifty, really explosive. I like his running style a lot. Sam Williams-Dixon, I sort of anticipated, like, okay, maybe he's the 3rd down back. He's the Ronnie Harmon or Darren Sproles. We can name Chargers running backs all day long if we want to.
Gary Anderson.
Oregon State coach? No,
No, a long time ago.
Yes.
LaDainian Tomlinson?
Yes. LaDainian, also a Chargers. There you go. We'll be talking more about the Chargers a little later on in the show, as it turns out.
Charges or Chargers?
Yes. Sam Williams-Dixon, though, feels like he could be a guy out of that backfield as a weapon. And I'm more impressed with him in terms of running. Like, that has exceeded my expectations. The pass element of his game has always felt like that might be where he could make an immediate impact. Carlos Loughlin said he thinks this whole running back unit could be a bigger part of the passing game, and that's something that they're, the coaching staff, the quarterback staff, Chip Kelly, Ryan Day, they're emphasizing to quarterbacks. Check it down. That's fine, because they've got some real talented guys who can do some damage in space. Yeah.
If your third or fourth option is Quinshon Judkins or Travion Henderson, that's a first world problem. But as Loughlin said, he tells his running backs about catching the pass. The age of the dinosaur is over. You've got to do more than just one thing. And you mentioned how low James Peoples runs. I wrote the other day, he's like low like a Roomba, basically. And it's like bouncing off the couch, and he's really, really low, and he does bounce around. And those two guys, I've been impressed with both. I expected to be impressed with James Peoples. I'm more impressed than I expected to be with Sam Williams-Dixon, because we didn't get to see much of him last year.
We do have a super chat, which I want to get to in a second, but James Peoples does not have a nickname yet, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
DJ Roomba. I'm just saying, think about it.
Why the DJ?
It's a Parks and Rec. Tom Haverford.
Oh, there you go.
Tom
That's
Haverford's
right.
DJ Roomba. Yeah. All right. Super chat.
Jose Alvarez. Unrelated, but I think a really great segment would be having two people play NC2A, similar skill, keep all things the same except second game, one player has to simply state if it's run or pass.
Okay. Oh, so this is I don't know how much you could hear out of that, but this is a great one. Two guys, you have a little bit of a scientific experiment. Science. Have the first game, two people of equal skill level play NCAA football, and see how that goes. Similar team, similar skill level, and then in the second game, everything's the same except for one person has to state before each play whether it's a run or a pass. That's the only information. That's the only difference we see. I guess, Tony, can you think of a reason why that would be relevant?
Like, if basically you and I would play or whatever, Kevin and I, and then in the second half, Kevin would get to know whether it's a run or a pass, or whether he would just have the heads up. And boy, you got to assume, like, Tom, you still got to make the plays.
You do still have to make the plays.
You still got to make the plays.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm running or passing.
that is part of the other issue. Kevin may not know whether he's running or passing.
Feels like you just call an RPO every time, so that solves the problem.
And it's like, because I've played, I don't know if you've ever played Battleship with Kevin, and I'll be like, C8, and he'll be like, I don't know. It's really freaking annoying. Anyway, speaking of the video game, Quinshon Judkins was asked about his spin move, which is very famous on the internet, on social media, on the game. And he said that he doesn't know how to do it on the video game.
Which seems ironic that it seems like it would be much harder to do on the field than on the game, but he can do it on the field, but not on the game.
And so I said, so you're like the only person that can't do it, and basically everybody else can do it. Isn't that gimmick infringement? And he agreed.
Felt like he kind of no-sold that one, but
no, he laughed.
Yeah,
he chuckled.
That's a. I think it's interesting that these are guys and they have a chance to. You think these are college players and they have a chance to play, and it's like, look, I'm in the video game. That's so exciting. That's so fun. It's a little bit telling that you'll talk to guys and it's like, oh yeah, I played a bunch of it. This is a time when you're not going to class. Classes haven't started yet, so you're in a little bit of a gap right now. No one is spending a lot of time, from guys I've talked to anyway. No one's like, oh yeah, I'm on season 47. Podcasters, college football bloggers are on season 47 of their dynasties. Doesn't feel like a lot of the players are.
Yeah, I mean, the players are getting here at like 6 and leaving at like 10, 6 in the morning and 10 at night. And although Quinshon did say he finally got to play as Ohio State yesterday here, so they've got it here somewhere.
Yeah, but yeah, this is air mattress season where we saw this. We're not quite to the 2-a-day kind of thing,
right?
You'll see guys walking through the indoor with like big inflatable air mattresses because you have spent all morning running around in the heat, and then you come in and you're going to eat lunch and you're going to sit in meetings and all that kind of stuff, and then you potentially are going to have something later on in the day as well. And boy, that's it is nap time sometimes.
It used to look like disaster relief, like
Yeah.
disaster relief center, just people just sleeping along the walls on air mattresses or in a hallway. But they got rid of the 2-a-days and certainly the 3-a-days, so you can just relax and you don't have to be scattered all over the place. I think it's easier to get your air mattress and take a nap.
Anything else on the running backs before we move on to the other news of the day?
Well, I no.
Okay, good.
Yeah, let's get on to the next thing.
Dynamite drop in, Monty. News from the NCAA,
what could this
the National
possibly be?
Collegiate Athletic Association. Headline: Michigan committed NCAA violations in football program, which is tell me something I don't know. However, we know how we love to read from documents. Don't
Yes.
we? A Division I committee on infractions panel determined former Michigan head football coach Jim Harbaugh violated recruiting and inducement rules, engaged in unethical conduct, failed to promote an atmosphere of compliance.
Jim Harbaugh?
File that phrase away for later. Failed to promote an atmosphere of compliance and violated head coach responsibility obligation, resulting in a 4-year show cause order. Michigan, 5 individuals who currently or previously worked for its football program earlier reached agreement with the NCAA enforcement staff on violations concerning recruiting and coaching activities by non-coaching staff members that occurred within the I almost said within the cheeseburger program. Wow, that was within the football program.
Wow.
The school also agreed that it failed to monitor the football. The school also agreed that it failed to monitor the football program. That's a phrase we've heard before. The committee issued a statement on April 16th confirming resolution of the case for the school and the participating individuals. The committee's bifurcation of the case permitted those parties to immediately begin serving their penalties while awaiting the committee's final decision on the remaining contested portion of the case. Harbaugh was not part of the agreement, so his case was resolved separately. So this is a 4-year show cause on Jim Harbaugh, and this is for cheeseburgers, etc. This is not related to the Connor Stallions matter at all. This is the previous thing that was hand waved as nothing. Now, is Jim Harbaugh coming back to the college game knowing that he will have to serve a 1-year suspension?
No.
Probably not. He's probably staying in Los Angeles with the Chargers. But to me, again, you look at some of the phrases in there and you hear the, this is the thing that was nothing. This was the laughable nothing thing. Now your head coach has been suspended. He was suspended he served a 3-game suspension at the beginning of last season for this.
Yes.
Served a 3-game suspension for the Stallions thing later in the season. Now he's got a 4-year show cause. They're also on 3 years probation. I know that everyone is throwing out the specific penalties they're expecting, and we are not doing that because I think there's just you're way too soon to have any of that kind of stuff. However, it would be a significant deviation from precedent to have this be, no, there's nothing. We're just going to have sort of on paper punishments for all of the guys that beat the posse out of town to get to the NFL.
Yeah, I think when people are talking about there's nobody left to punish, then I guess you punish the legacy. If that's the one, which would be not just any punishments towards the coaches who have left, but what they accomplished, I guess, is the thing that you would have remaining if you don't want to punish anybody currently. But I'm not proposing anything like that. It's just, it is interesting when everybody's gone, go ahead and punish me. I don't care because I'm no longer part of this. And I'm defensive coordinator. I'm now head coach. I don't care about your little NCAA rules. That's where we are now. But with as firm as the NCAA has been on this, as you said, 1-year suspension, 3 years probation, 4-year show cause for stonewalling level 2 violations.
Yes.
What do you get for stonewalling several level 1 violations, including your own school having a level 1 violation, perhaps according to the draft of the NOA, the Notice of Allegations? What does that bring you? Because that is all much more serious than this, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the NCAA's opinion, if they're viewing level 2 is less serious than level 1, that's what the levels mean. Level 1 is the most serious. If 5 individuals and the program, I believe, with level 1s in the leaked draft Notice of Allegations that came out over the weekend, I think you're going to have, no matter what it is, you're going to have people say this is too much, this is unfair, you're punishing the wrong people. You're going to have people saying this wasn't enough. Like whatever it is, everyone's going to claim victory and or defeat, and everyone's going to have been right all along, and that's just kind of how it goes. I don't know that there is a punishment other than no punishment whatsoever that is going to make Michigan people happy, because if I don't expect them to take scholarships away. I feel like that's kind of not going to be as much of a thing now.
Right.
But, if they do well, then you're going to have, you're punishing people who had nothing to do with it. And if you take away, you take away postseason, you're punishing people who had nothing to do with it. And if you take away, you take away the wins in the games, well, how do you know how important it was? And, he still wasn't even there at the end of the national championship season. How can you take that away? Like, it's going to be, but it wasn't going to be fair to punish them last year either, because the investigation hadn't gone. So it's like the only fair time to punish us is never. And that's probably true of a lot of schools in this kind of realm. But yeah, it just feels like, again, when the punishments are, boy, that's a pretty strong punishment, even if it's a theoretical one, even if it's an on-paper one, as they're set, it feels like you're sort of setting up dominoes here for, hey, this is a real significant one, and hey, Jim Harbaugh is already, got a 4-year show cause, and then whatever else he's going to get on top of that, and he's the head coach, and he's now potentially not participating in 2 separate investigations. That's something the NCAA holds against you. If you're on probation previously, that's something the NCAA holds against you. I mean, your new head coach, Sharon Moore, had previous violations, and now it sounds like is potentially facing new violations, and they're only level 2, but it's a repeat offender for your new head coach too.
I mean, Jim Harbaugh didn't want the 4-game suspension, or the NCAA said no to the 4-game suspension. Michigan gave him a 3, and the NCAA tacked on another season, and that's one failure to monitor situation. You're telling me there wasn't failure? There isn't failure to monitor coming from this next situation? Repeat violator, failure to monitor. How many failure to monitors does it take to get a lack of institutional control? Does it take to
a lack of institutional control? I don't have the full graphic in front of me, but there's a pattern of that's part of it. Well, when you have repeated things, that becomes a pattern. That's how patterns work. That's what the word means. Yes. Speaking of what words mean, from Tom Orr, Jim Harbaugh's attorney, my thoughts on today's NCAA decision: Coach Harbaugh. Kangaroo emoji, scales of justice emoji, statement NCAA COI decision. The way I see it from Coach Harbaugh's perspective, today's COI decision is like being in college and getting a letter from your high school saying you've been suspended because you didn't sign the yearbook. If I were in Coach Harbaugh's shoes and had an $80 million contract as head coach of the Chargers, I wouldn't pay any attention to the findings of a kangaroo court, which claims to represent the principles of the nation's most flagrant repeat violator of the federal antitrust laws.
You said flagrant repeat violator. I was like, who's he talking about?
Yeah. Tom Mars knows how to cut a heel promo. I will give him that. Tom Mars is also, when you read through his statements, the hyperbole, like the sliders are always up to the absolute top. Everything is the greatest miscarriage of justice in the history of the known universe. He's not wrong. Like, what does Jim Harbaugh care? No. What I think is what's still to be determined is, okay, Jim Harbaugh is, I was going to say on a beach in Sewataneo, which is not a great comparison because Andy didn't do it. But, he is safely outside of Shawshank Prison right now. They're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Shawshank Prison this weekend up in Mansfield. Did you know that?
Top 5 favorite movie, probably.
IMDb, I believe, ranked it as the #1 movie of all time, which I don't strongly disagree with that. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the Shawshank Redemption.
We'll do a live show later.
Jim Harbaugh is sitting on a beach sipping Mai Tais and doesn't care. There are people behind in Ann Arbor who could be left to face the justice that Jim Harbaugh has fled from. People who Jim Harbaugh, theoretically cared about, but who he has now left to go. And, Jim Harbaugh is in this position. Jim Harbaugh got the 12-month thing because he was not cooperating with the NCAA, because he felt like this is stupid. I think this is stupid, and therefore I'm not going to cooperate. Well, okay. Guess what? He thinks the next thing's stupid too. He just, released his press conference thing earlier the week where he was the most innocent man in the history of the universe, and no one has ever known less about something than I know about this, and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't feel like that's going to encourage the NCAA to go easier on them.
No, it reminds me of right before I left for college, I got banned from the local racks for life. I was like, I don't care. You can't stop me. And then we're like, we're also going to ban your family. It's like, ooh. And so my family has not talked to me since. But I don't care. I don't go to racks anymore. I don't live around the racks.
There's only one racks left. Do you know where the one racks left is?
Lucasville.
Lancaster, very close. Lancaster,
I knew
Ohio.
it was
Yes.
L city.
Lancaster, Ohio. We need to do a hungry huddle down at the racks down in almost said Lucasville there, Lancaster at some point. So you're a bad influence on me.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
But
it is going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. But I mean,
not to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you. That's why I always say this is never going to any type of court lawsuit type of thing when something gets handed down. Jim Harbaugh is avoiding the legal process. Mm-hmm. His lawyer is telling the NCAA, don't even bother sending us anything because we're not doing anything with this. We're not going to partake. And so why would Michigan then draw him into this with the lawsuit and unbury all of whatever skeletons may be in there?
Right. You don't want to be responding to, be forced to be responsive to things and, be in contempt of court if you don't respond, if you don't produce certain hard drives that may have been removed from the football facility, things of that nature.
No, these are all clean anyway. There's nothing on here. Oh, well.
It's at the bottom of that lake with my gun. It's all down there. Kevin, do we have questions?
Yes, we do. Jordan Kapler, were there any questions to Coach Loughlin about playing two running backs at the same time?
I did not see any of that when I was over there.
I don't think I heard that, no.
Sorry, Jordan.
The question was, were there any questions to Carlos Loughlin about playing two running backs at the same time? And the answer, I think the answer was no.
John Moore, if one linebacker, I'm assuming from Ohio State, is all Big Ten, who will it be?
If one linebacker from Ohio State is all Big Ten, are we assuming first team all Big Ten or on an all Big Ten team?
I would say, well, here's the thing. I would say Cody because he's going to be playing the most, but you could get a CJ Hicks or Sonny Styles making more plays in the backfield, which gets the voters' attention. Because, what's Cody Simon going to end up with? Like 80 to 100 tackles? Because there's going to be a lot of tackles to go around. You're not expecting the defense to be out there all that long anyway. But 17 and a half tackles for loss or 13 and a half tackles for loss, if you're up there at the leaderboard, that's going to get people's attention.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of this goes to, this is a more complicated question than it seems on its face, because a lot of this depends on, understanding how the voting process
Stupid
works.
voters.
Stupid voters, yes. Let me tell you how stupid the voters are, folks. Is Brent Musburger on, not literally Brent Musburger, but today's equivalent of Brent Musburger on the call for the Oregon game where one of the linebackers makes 3 tackles and he calls him the Kaiser, and then all of a sudden that sticks, and then every time that network has him again, and then he becomes the main character of the narrative on the defense. And there's a lot of that stuff that goes into it, especially on the media side, the coach side. I feel like a lot of times it's just stats.
Well, let me give you the stats for the media side is great, because in 2019, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I believe it was 2021 rather, because he was a freshman in 2020. He was not part of the Big Ten stat page for like the first. There was a period of time where he was not on there. Like when the voting was done, he was not there. He still made like third team, but he had 1,000 yards receiving or whatever, or like 800 yards receiving. He should have been higher up there, but he was not listed. Like he was just omitted. And when the voters are going, let me go check out the stats, see who's good. I'll check receivers. You judge them by stats, and Jackson Smith and Jigba isn't even on there. Like he doesn't exist. Like, well, I guess I'll vote for somebody else because he doesn't exist.
Yeah, and there's a certain name recognition piece of it. There's a certain all of that. So, I think there's a very good chance that 2 of those guys are either first or second team All Big Ten. And I could see all 3 of them being first, second, or third team All Big Ten.
El Suzaba, will the NFL do anything to Harbaugh?
Will the NFL do anything to Jim Harbaugh? I think there's no indication the NFL is going to do anything to Harbaugh. I think the Jim Tressel thing wasn't the Jim Tressel thing kind of self-imposed back?
It was voluntary, but Roger Goodell said I was going to suspend him anyway.
Yeah, and
also Jim Tressel was an instant replay monitor, assistant, helper. He's not the head coach, so I don't. For one, there's no way any suspension would match the NCAA suspension. I'm not expecting anything here because the thoughts on punishments from the NCAA has changed completely since, as we're saying, since the Jerry Sandusky situation, where like the weight of these things has changed, and so I wouldn't expect anything to carry over. I would not expect the Chargers to allow anything to carry over, and the ownership would not allow it.
But what will Tom Marsh say?
Tom Mars would agree with me on that one. What's even to suspend?
All right, so it looks like we are through the bulk of our questions. So we're going to wrap it up here. We will be back here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Thursday. Another Ohio State practice number 7 of the fall. We'll have another round of interviews. Tony, who are we talking to tomorrow?
Just Ryan Day, I believe.
Oh, is it just Ryan Day?
Just
okay,
the head coach Ryan Day after practice,
After
which
practice.
we will
All
get to see.
Yes, so we will
theoretically.
I think this is Big Ten Network Day, I think. So, yeah, we will be here. We'll get to watch practice, get to talk to Ryan Day. All that coming up on Thursday at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. If you've not already hit the thumbs up on this video, please do that. Please remind me next time in the comments to remind you to do that earlier in the show. I blame Tony, to a lesser extent Kevin, more Kevin than Tony, but that's okay. But we do appreciate you joining us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Make sure you hit that bell at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle so you get notified when we do these live shows. We're doing a bunch of live content for you, a bunch of interviews, recorded interviews as well. There's a lot going on at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle and BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.